Mother Nature might have ended the Mets series in St. Louis early. We'll call it a two-game sweep, though. The Metsies return home for a little short 5-game mini homestand, beginning with the rival Braves, and then shockingly, the first-place Phillies come to town for 2 games on Monday and Tuesday. We got a lot to catch up on. Our special guest to talk about these Mets and everything broadcasting is the Mets radio voice on WCBS 880 AM. That's Keith Raad. And also, after Keith, I'll play my interview with the great Hank Azaria. You're not going to want to miss that. Basically created The Simpsons, Brock Meyer, the voice of your childhood. And The Simpsons, shockingly, still going. He'll talk about that. So we got Keith Raad, we got Hank Azaria, and it's all coming up next on the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Mets Magic with Jake Brown.
And it's in there, strike three called. The Mets win the pennant. The New York Mets have won the National League pennant. Put it in the books. The New York Mets, for the first time in 15 years, are champions of the National League.
The sickest New York Mets podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Welcome aboard the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic. I'm your host, Jake Brown. You can find me on Twitter, X, wherever you get your social media at Jake Brown Radio. And of course, subscribe to the Sick Podcast on YouTube at the Sick Podcast Mets Magic. And Sick Pod Mets on Twitter as well. Follow us there, and you can listen wherever you get podcasts. We are now on Spotify. If you are a Spotify user, we are on Spotify. We're an Apple Podcast, wherever else you get your podcast. Make sure you check us out. I know a little late this week on a Friday. Was a little bit under the weather on Thursday. A lot of good things happening in New York right now, from the Rangers now taking a 3-0 series lead, one away from the Eastern Conference Finals. The Knicks looking to fight off the Pacers without OG Anunoby, 2 wins away from the Eastern Conference Finals. And our New York Mets with a 2-game win streak over the St. Louis Cardinals. Wednesday was washed away, moved to August, where the Mets will play about 10 different time zones. Looking forward to seeing how that goes in August. Maybe it's a different Mets team when they face the Cardinals. Will it be a Mets team with Pete Alonso and Jeff McNeil on it after that trade deadline? Long way to go to find out about that. But it was good to see them win a few games and the Bats come alive after a dreadful weekend down in Tampa in a weird, funky series where a lot of games there seem to be weird with that stadium, with that roof, balls coming off the roof. It's a strange place to play. And then Thursday night, I got to go to the Jeff McNeil and Hank Azaria charity poker event at Citi Field. Had a blast. Some of the Mets were there. Pete Alonso did say, "Hey, I love your chain." I said, "Don't tell anyone. It is from TJ Maxx. I'm sorry to report. I'm not wearing the chain right now." Someone tweeted about it turning green. Yes, those fake chains eventually will change color. So soon I may become the Incredible Hulk when that does turn green. But shout out to Pete Alonso for the compliment. Shout out to Pete Alonso for starting to turn around, we hope, on Tuesday, where he had a 3 RBI day and he homered. After Monday, I said on SNY New York Post Sunday, sit him Monday. Needs a day. Mendoza must have listened. They sit him. He comes in later in the game, and then Tuesday he goes off to help the Mets win. A guy who calls Pete Alonso ding-dongs all the time, and he calls a lot of Mets calls, is the radio voice of the New York Mets on W, as they taught us to say at Hofstra University, WCBS 880 AM. It is Keith Raad. Yes, that's right. There are 2 A's. Email's got 2 R's. I mean, goodness gracious. You threw me off with the 2 R email. Keith Raad, welcome to the program. How you doing?
Good to see you, man. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Last time I saw you, I think I was bringing you churro nachos at Citi Field.
Churro nachos. You brought me is Shake Shack burger. So every time I see you, it's always a delicious hangout. So
yeah, that's my motto, is just eat and eat more. That's why my titties get bigger by the day, Keith. Like I'm gonna have to wear a bra soon at this point with the amount of food I'm eating at Citi Field. But it's good to see you. We love you. I want you to start here with the story you told me, because it's one of my favorite stories about David Stearns and being mistaken as a cleaning intern in Brooklyn.
Yeah, so that story is a great story. The sad part is it's not true, which David Stearns actually came up to me and told me, but it's still a good story. And as we like to say in our Mets radio booth, don't let facts get in the way of a good story.
Wait, did
So
he see
basically,
the New York Post tweet about it and he confronted you after that?
I think it's just taken on a life of its own for the last 15 years. But no, his introductory press conference afterwards, when he met the broadcasters, I said, "Hey, I worked in Brooklyn. I know that crazy story." He goes, "Oh, the one where like I was part of the cleaning crew." I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Not true." So the story goes is that David Stearns' first internship with the Mets was with the Brooklyn Cyclones in Coney Island. Very basic internship, fold t-shirts, bring this over here, lift that, and he was ended up cleaning the bathrooms. So he shows up on his first day, as the story goes, and he's wearing a Harvard shirt because David Stearns went to Harvard. He walks into Steve Cohen's office, who's the vice president of the Cyclones, not the owner of the Mets, different Steve Cohen. And Steve sees his shirt and goes, "Okay." And he goes, "Yeah, it's my first day." Steve goes, "Great. So pick up a mop and head to the bathroom and start cleaning." So he does those things and starts cleaning because at the time, the cleaning crew was called the Harvard Cleaning Crew. So that is an amazing story because David Stearns, the future president of baseball operations for the Brewers and now for the Mets, was once accidentally told to go clean the bathrooms in Brooklyn. And he smiled and told me that that's a great story, but unfortunately, it's not true, which is terrible to hear because it's such a good story. But things turned out okay for David Stearns anyway. So.
Did nothing similar to that realm happen on that fateful day in Brooklyn?
He did say that he had to clean. When you're an intern, you have to clean things you didn't expect you'd ever have to see in your life, let alone clean. And that was probably on the list. I mean, this is going back to the time where Brooklyn had grass. So he would pull tarp, and then there's a famous picture of Billy Harner, who is the director of communications, and I think he's assistant general manager now. There was like a Halloween night that they're wearing costumes, and David Stearns is there pulling the tarp next to Billy Harner dressed as Fred Flintstone. So there's just great humble beginnings for all that stuff.
For real. And you've had your humble beginnings in the minor leagues as well. Was there ever a time you said, was there ever an off season, a time, your day off where you were like, I'm going to leave and do something else or go to another industry?
Sure. So yes. And it was because I was under the realm of intern. I remember there was one stop on my trail that I won't mention because I respect all the places that I've been. But there was one stop along the trail where I had to, on the last day of this seasonal internship, final day, there is nothing left to do. The season is over. We were given a little like razor blade, screwdriver, hey, go pick all the caulk from the concourse, all the railings they're going to re-caulk this off season. So I sat there on the concrete of this third base concourse, picking the caulk out of the railings, going, I don't know. This is probably it. I mean, I went to college for God's sakes. So I'm in debt up to my eyeballs and I'm picking caulk. So that was one moment where I was like, okay. And then it took a little while to get the love for it back, but I'm glad I stuck with it.
That was the bottom of the barrel. Take us to the top when you get the call. It's like the Christian Scott call to the big leagues last week. What was the Keith Raad call to the big leagues? I assume tears may have been shed and a lot of emotions going through your head of, wow, I was picking caulk and cleaning minor league ballparks for like $1 an hour. Now I'm the voice of the New York Mets.
Yeah, so just your whole life in the minor leagues, you're just trying to be, the word is validated. I use all the time. I think I'm good. I hope somebody sees me out there as good enough to get a big league job. I didn't think I'd be good enough to get a New York Mets big league job right away as my first job in the major leagues. But once things start to snowball with interview processes, and I had done about 2 or 3 different steps with Odyssey. There was a New York Post article that Andrew Marchand wrote that dropped that kind of, to me, was, hey, I think I got this job. And then 2 days later, Chris Olivero called me, and I was outside the Brooklyn Cyclone Stadium in Coney Island, and standing where I've stood when I've gotten on the bus to drive 8 hours to Mahoning Valley, Ohio, or Burlington, Vermont, where no one's going to be listening except for my mother and maybe some people at the Cyclones. And that's where he called and said, hey, man, I want to welcome you to the show. You're going to the major leagues. And it was sort of so emotional by that point because it was about a week or 10 days of interviews and maybe this will happen. And the fact that the validation hit was just like, wow, thank God I did all those things, all those innings. They all paid off. They all totally paid off. But once you get here, I found out now in my second year, you got to stay here. So you got to stay sharp, got to stay good. You got to stay driven.
When you get that call, your thought must be like, I want to be here forever. You're a Mets guy. Like, you grew up a Mets fan, right? So like your thought is like a Howie, like a Gary, is like those kind of jobs are, you're there. And then as long as you're not fired and as long as they keep renewing your contract, you're not going to be, getting Indeed emails for what other opportunities are out there.
Ideally, life is long. You never know. As Howie has taught me, you could say anything on the radio once, because if you say the wrong thing, that could be the last time you say it. So you never know what kind of future there is for any of us. But I love the New York Mets. And in the minor leagues, I made so many different stops. And everywhere you go, I had to work for a team in Dayton that was a Reds affiliate. You fall in love with the Reds for a year. I had to work for a Rangers affiliate. You fall in love with the Texas Rangers for a year. And then when I worked for the Cyclones, I worked there for 5 years. I had never been at some place for 2, 3, 4 years. And you really get to meet people. So people joke that when I go to St. Lucie and I go to spring training is that I'm, kissing babies and shaking hands, because I walk the backfields and I know trainers and players and coaches, because as the years have gone by, they've moved up the chain and a new fresh set of people come in and they move up to high A, double A, triple A. So I do consider the Mets my absolute family, which is interesting in this business because, you approach it. I'm an Odyssey employee. I'm not a New York Mets employee, but still you're with these people 24/7, 365 sometimes, even though it feels longer than that. And it is truly a family. And I get to work next to Howie and Gary and Keith and Ron and Pat and Steve Gelbs. It's amazing. It's an amazing dream come true.
Yeah, it's the best broadcast crew, at least in baseball, maybe sports, but we'll say baseball for now. But do you get recognized? Like, radio is different because Howie has been on TV. Everyone knows Howie Rose, but not everyone knows Keith Raad. Like, do you go out and like once you speak, you get recognized, or you say your name, or does it not happen often? Like, take us through the process of getting recognized and not being recognized.
So the diehards probably know who I am by name. And there's the Raad report, which goes on the video board at Citi Field, probably a half hour before the game, that most people actually started to see my face. And that's 81 games a year. So they can start to recognize that, because you're right. Radio is different. You have to listen to the person first. And in your mind, what they look like is probably not what they sound like, in your mind, at least. And then this offseason, I was on SNY a bunch, Baseball Night in New York. So I did that probably once a week. So it's funny. One of the spring training games in Jupiter, we're playing the Marlins, and I'm walking through the parking lot with Howie, and some fans are yelling through the fans, "Hey, Howie, Howie, Howie." And Howie very kindly said, "Hey, do you guys know Keith Raad?" And I had already done a year of radio. They go, "Oh, yeah, the guy from SNY." It's like, okay, well, we're getting closer here. I'm actually the radio guy. But yes, it is tough to associate someone's face when you only hear their voice. But truly, I'm sure there's more people out there, but the diehards, the ones that are asking for autographs or by the field, usually know who I am, which is pretty cool.
A face for radio, some would say, as we all get in this business. But now you have a face for a jumbotron, and a big ass jumbotron, like the biggest in baseball. The best
Absolutely.
Broadcast crew and the biggest jumbotron in baseball. The Mets got it all, right?
Yeah, and I think last year you get the freshman 15 when you jump into the major leagues, because you go from city to city. And Jake, I say this affectionately, I'm sure you know. What are we eating? What are we having for lunch? What are we eating in Chicago? What are we having in Arizona? What are we having in Philly? So that video board at Citi Field was the biggest, and I realized, wow, hey, I can see all the food that I've eaten around my neck there. So I had to lose about 15 pounds, which I've done successfully. The question is, can I keep it off, because the season has started again? So that video board showed me, the screen adds 5-10 pounds. That video board adds about 50. So you have to keep it calm.
It's impossible. I've been doing food reviews wherever I go. Soon I'm going to be at McDonald's doing a fry review at this point. It's fun. And we're in the city of the greatest food in the world. Charles Barkley wants to take a crap all over New York, and then he follows it up talking about how great the New York food is. So it's like you could say bad things about New York, but then realize it is the greatest. But you're like, all right, St. Louis, I got to try these dry ribs. Cincinnati, I got to get the chili, the Skyline chili. So each city, it's hard to keep it off. It might be better you're on radio for that reason itself.
Absolutely. And I want from you, I know that Dave Portnoy has his pizza reviews, so he's just reviewing one thing citywide. I need to see the map view of all the chicken parm in the city and your rating, because I love chicken parm. I know some people, oh, sauce joint, chicken parm's not really Italian. Chicken parm is incredible. It's good. It's the best thing ever. And so I'd like to know where to go to get the right one. And I know you're the guy to talk to for that.
Yeah, well, I do tweet out my pictures. I had one in Boston, was delicious at Carmelita's a week or two ago. Was fantastic. So we're taking chicken parm worldwide. I call myself Mr. 205 because my birthday is February 5th. I'm a minor league. I'm the Brooklyn Cyclones Pitbull version. He's got a little bit smoother of a bald head. He's probably had some work done. He's got a little bit more money. But yeah, Mr. 205 going around the globe. I also love 205 because Ruben Studdard wore a 205 jersey representing Birmingham, Alabama in season 1 of American Idol back in the day. You remember Ruben Studdard back in the day?
I do. I almost had to do a double take there. Like, why are we talking about Ruben Studdard? Clay Aiken was the final 2 that year. Of course I remember that year.
I saw them on tour. I mean, I went on the American Idol tour back in the day, and then I ended up hosting a podcast with Constantine Maroulis from American Idol. So life comes at you really full circle, and you never know what's going to come out of my mouth. We could go Ruben Studdard, or we could talk about the New York Mets, which is why you're here with Keith Raad, radio voice of the Mets on WCBS 880 That is a tongue, 880 AM. I got so excited with the the W, that I forgot the rest of it. 880 AM. Make sure you listen to the broadcast. The Mets right now, you told me before the season they might be better than what people expect. And, I would agree. Right now, they're probably right around where we thought, or maybe a little bit better at 500. Doing it without Senga, doing it with Francisco Alvarez on the shelf probably for another month, doing it with a plethora really of injuries and adversity and rainouts and weird weather. I mean, we continue to have bizarre weather even this weekend in New York. Who knows? Tomorrow gets rained out. They've battled a lot of adversity. And listen, the season we're in today, they're tied for the final wild card spot. So amongst everything that's gone wrong, they're in a National League that, as of now this is going to change, is wide open. So if you're a Met fan, for the people who are like, trade this guy, slow your roll, because the Mets are in the thick of a playoff race. And I know it's May 10th and it sounds ridiculous, but this team could be hanging on here for a while.
To be honest, I looked at it going into that last game in St. Louis and we got rained out. There are 5 teams in the National League that are above 500. 5. AL has 9 teams above 500. So if you're just looking at that, if you're the Mets, you have an opportunity to get in just by being 500 or close to it. I think I really learned that last year, just as the chase came down for it. The Mets were destined, hey, we're going to win not only the division, but we're going to go to the World Series. That didn't quite happen. But when you teeter around 500, you look at the teams that got in last year, like the Marlins, they snuck in 4 or 5 games better than 500. So if you just stay there, as boring and annoying as it might be as a fan base, I totally get it. If you just stay there and you find yourselves having a good 5 days, you can find yourself in there, especially this year with the NL with only 5 teams above 500 on May 10th. It's still very early, and it's still very early for the Mets. From what I've seen, the bullpen, I think, is for real. It is a difference maker. David Stearns, once he brought in Fujinami and Diekman, at the time, those were the moves. We haven't seen Fujinami yet in the big leagues, but those moves about fortifying the bullpen, getting Jorge Lopez in as well. You're going, okay, like this is a legitimate bullpen that will keep you in the game close. And the Mets, every single night of these broadcasts, we find ourselves pulling our hair out by the 9th inning, just constantly building the drama. These games are 1-run games, 2-run games, tying run to the plate. Carlos Mendoza told me, I said to him, does it feel like every night's crazy like this? He said that the Mets are top 2 or 3 in high leverage situations. So the sustainability of these close games, I think, will change. We might see a little bit more, some more normal games, and that might lead into just a little bit of a cooling down of the wins are the wins, the losses are the losses, and then you really find out who this team is moving forward.
Yeah, better looking, better bearded version of me and Reed Garrett has been a godsend for this bullpen. I saw Jake Diekman last night. I said, nice bearded. Sean Manaea, another piece, had a fantastic jacket. I had asked where the hell he got his jacket. He was fly and beat Jeff McNeil in the long drive, by the way, which I said, look at you. Jeff is like a professional. So that's pretty impressive. Figgy was like in 6th place. I was pissed that he made it on the board. You had the current Mets, and then you had Nelson Figueroa on there. I was hoping Todd Zeile would beat him out, but unfortunately he did not. But yeah, it's a revelation. Some of these guys that a lot of Met fans and average fans didn't know of. Like Manaea we knew of, but we didn't think he'd be as good as you have. Fujinami, you mentioned, he's been terrible in the minors.
Yeah.
That was a flyer they took that didn't work out. Jorge Lopez, like you said, flyer that did work out, and a guy who was a former All-Star. So shout out to former, toilet cleaner David Stearns at one point for putting this non-toilet bullpen together, non-toilet rotation, and with Senga potentially back, joining a rotation that Christian Scott now is going to be a part of, it seems. Did you call Christian Scott games in Brooklyn in 2022, was it?
I did. Yes, I did call Christian Scott games. So I know Christian well enough, and he's awesome. He really is. And to be honest with you, he's kind of along for the ride of what this has been, which is he was drafted as one thing. He was drafted with these pitches and this arsenal, and the Mets said, hey, we think you should try this. And he's done it. And if you look at that split, just go to his year by years in the minors, you can tell the difference. His ERA and his WHIP were one thing, and then he makes this change to his arsenal, and it's completely different. He was unhittable in the minor leagues. So it's no wonder his stock took off. And you have to have a motivational player meeting a farm system that sees something. They saw something, and truly it's just the beginning of his stuff. I mean, that start he had against the Rays, early adversity, 3 hits, I think, to start the game. You think, okay, young pitcher, he's just going to implode here. I'll get somebody up in the pen. He came out of it. Not only come out of it, he got out of it stronger. And it reminded me, this is going to be crazy to say, I know, the guys like Scherzer and Verlander, they always say those legendary guys, if you don't get them early, you're in for a long ride. And that was in the one start what Christian Scott did. If you didn't get him early, didn't put him away early, which the Rays could have done, they didn't, you're going to be in for it. And they were. The Rays were certainly in for it. It's a bummer the Mets didn't win Scott's debut, but he showed out big time. I think Mets fans cannot wait to see how he does. This weekend he faces the Braves, so best of luck, kid.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough battle. The Met Killer and Marcell Ozuna and Austin Riley and Cunha, all those guys that the Braves have. The second place Braves, I might add, because the first place Phillies come to town for, I don't understand the stupid schedule. I mean, a 2-game series against a division rival, and then you go there for 2. I'm like, this scheduling, I get it. Baseball, you want each team to see each other. The Mets don't need to see the Royals, the Rays, the Twins every year. Like, to cut back important divisional games just so we could go around like Carmen San Diego. Where in the world is Carmen Mets Diego? Like, they just don't need to play every team. I'm sure it's nice for you. Listen, you get to see different cities and travel, and San Diego, I need to go to that stadium. I love San Diego. If I had to move from New York and be there, that's fine. They always play those teams. But like playing these random American League teams every year, I don't know. What do you think about this universal schedule here?
So I do like it. I know that I'm in the minority with that, but I liked last year when the Angels came and we got to see Shohei Ohtani. And by the way, everybody was on their feet at Citi Field videoing every single at bat that he took. Now he's a unicorn. He's one thing, but it is nice to blend together these games. The sad part is that the AL and the NL as we know it, kind of the beginning of the end. I mean, there was, hey, we have no idea who they are until we see them in the World Series. I liked that uniqueness, but I do like it. I'm sorry. I like the new schedule. I think it's a pain when there's rainouts, like we'll see in August when we're doing, including New York, 8 cities in a month.
And 4 time zones in a 10-game stretch or something? Like, how is that possible?
Yeah, it's just going to be a lot of coffee for that trip. But I do like it. I don't think it's perfect yet. I don't know how to fix it and make it better because it's not great. It's kind of annoying when it does when there are rain issues. But would you when teams are bad, when the Nationals are bad, do you want to play the Nationals 19 times again? I don't know how much I love that. I mean, I wish there were more divisional games. I don't know if going from 19 to 12 is a good move. Maybe more of those divisional matchups with the Braves and the Phillies.
Like 5 3-game series or something of that realm. I just think the 2-game and the strange numbers, I don't know. Just make it a nice. I know 15 is an odd number, but really it's even because it's 5 3-game series. It's simple. But I get you wanting to travel. So you're a little bit biased on that answer. But I respect it. And listen, I think it is good for baseball in some realms because you see different teams. The Ohtani game, when he was here, I'm in Marlins man seats for the Sunday game. Of course, the game's on Peacock. Nobody's watching me except the diehards. I'm behind home, and nobody's watching the game. Like the one time I'm in the TV seats there.
Wow.
But I will be in Cadillac Club Sunday, so hopefully someone hits a
Ooh.
little ball over the little crevice and it drops in. I did catch Jake Chisholm's home run ball in 2021, and Gary Cohen, speaking of broadcasters like you, accidentally called it his first career homer. So everyone was tweeting me and like, you have to give that back. It's his first homer. The broadcaster said it. And a minute later, Gary corrected himself and he said, oh, he hit 2 in the COVID shortened season. It's his first this season. And it's the first 0-2 pitch DeGrom ever gave up a homer. So the whole game, Keith, I was heckled by Mets fans to throw it back. I was with a girl on a date and she was like, she's going to dump you. She's going to break up with you if you don't throw it back. I'm like, one, I was working at the New York Post. I can't risk the trouble if I throw a ball in the field. And I also don't want to get kicked out of the game. 2, I've been to 700 Met games and never got a ball. So, of course, I'm keeping a home run ball, like, right?
Yes. And you know how hard it, like, you're never going to catch another one. Like, keep it.
Never. Yeah.
And, I hate to say it, it's not, home run balls once in a million years. Girls, they're everywhere. You can get another one.
Yeah. I did. Yes. It didn't last long after that. Not because I didn't throw the ball.
That I can't help you with.
Yeah. No one can. It's a tough field out here in the streets of New York City. Despite how many people there are, it actually is a tougher city for that. Keith Raad with us for another couple of minutes. Has Howie Rose ever talked to you about the future and like you potentially taking his spot? And do you ever have dreams at night of I'm going to replace Howie Rose one day, a guy that once asked my future mother out back in 1982 at a Toyota dealership in Flushing?
Yes, to be clear, we're talking about your mother. My mother had nothing to do with that Toyota dealership in Flushing. Listen, Howie and he definitely called me before this season and said, hey, I'm cutting back to do 100 games, which 81 home and then select road games, to which I said, okay. And his logic was, this is what I have to do in order to stretch it out for a couple of years. If he does 162 like I do, or Chris Majkowski does, it's a lot. It's a lot on a toll on the body. So if he did, hey, I'm going to do the full season, he may not last very long because it's just exhausting. So I said, Howie, you better not be going anywhere. And he said, this is my plan. I do 100 games. I can stretch it out for a couple of years. I don't want him going anywhere. Nobody wants him going anywhere. And so for right now, I am doing 162 games. I get to do 100 with Howie. The other 62, I get to take the lead on and work with Pat McCarthy. So from a personal standpoint, I'm in hog heaven right now. And I do not want Howie Rose going anywhere. Nobody does. And he's not going anywhere. And if he does, we'll have to go down to Florida, go to his house in West Palm, pull him back.
Listen, he's 70 years old, so he's getting up there. He's still strong, but I asked because of the health concerns in the past year or two that he had, the health issues. You got to wish the best for him and his family and his health. That's the most important thing. So it's good that he's cutting back, but I'm curious how long it will go. And, he's in good hands, I think, with the potential replacements. And it's definitely a cool opportunity if it were to happen. Obviously, we all love Howie. But if he says, hey, like a John Sterling, now John made it to like 86, which is, what did you think of that? What did you think of the mid-season retirement?
First of all, I do know Howie has told me that I'm not doing what John did, which is work until I'm 86. I'm going to enjoy my twilight years, if you will, on the golf course. So that I can tell you. But with John, I just don't know why he realized it so late in the offseason, the start of the year. He sounded great. I mean, sometimes the Mets will be playing at night and the Yankees will play during the day. And while you're doing your book, you put a game on. And I would hear him. He sounded incredible. He sounded fine, as normal as he would. It was a little shocking that it was, hey, John's going to have an announcement on Saturday. And then 15 minutes later on Twitter, it's like he's stepping down immediately, which was a little bit strange. But very happy for him. I mean, I can't lie. I grew up listening to him and Susan for a lot of my childhood because of playing in my backyard. My neighbor was doing yard work and he'd always have the Yankee games on. So I've listened to them since I was a kid. But it was strange. I just he at 86, hope everything's okay behind the scenes. He keeps saying his health is good. I just hope that that's the case because he should enjoy his retirement.
Yes, he should. What a run it's been. And Howie Rose, whenever it ends, it'll be an incredible run as well. Have you had the Mel's Butcher Box burger yet at Citi Field? I'll close with this.
No, not yet. Is that new this year? I think that's
it's an award-winning burger in Promenade up top. I made my way up top to behind home. It's at the Pat LaFrida stand, and it was my favorite burger in the ballpark, and arguably one of the best burgers I've ever had.
It is only May 10th, so I'm making my way around the ballpark. I just had, was it Soul Chick?
The Korean fried chicken. Yep.
That stuff is pretty good. That was really, really good. There's the new deli in Caesars that's really good. Turkey sandwich with like really thick cut bacon. Highly recommend. But I'll be making my way to this Mel's Burger Bar because I've been to the OG Mel's on the Upper East Side. Mel's Butcher. Oh, maybe that's not the same one. Mel's Butcher Box. Beautiful. 1,300 calories. If we're fitting in 18 to 1,900. So this is what I'm learning about. Not still zooming in on it. I love it.
There's the material. The shallots are really what make it complete with the bourbon jam. It's
1,300 calories. So we got to have like a banana and peanut butter for breakfast, a banana peanut butter for lunch, and then we can have our 1,300 calorie burger and still walk into the ballpark the same way the next day without gaining a pound.
Hit the treadmill the next day. That's the way to just burn it all.
Oh yeah, burger to treadmill. Perfect. It always works out well like that.
With a couple of beers in between. It always works out well when that happens. Maybe you end up some yak in the toilet after that, but that's okay. Anyways, Keith Raad, you can follow. what a transition. Yeah, it was a remarkable burger. Keith Raad, follow him on Twitter, Keith Raad with 2 A's. Hear him on WCBS 880 with Odyssey, wherever you listen. You listen on 880 AM, you listen on the free Odyssey app. Keith, we appreciate you coming on the show. We'll check in with you later in the year. We'll see. You could stand up. We'll see if any weight was gained or weight was lost, maybe in September. And we appreciate you coming on.
Love it. Work on that chicken parm map, please.
It's coming. The Jake Brown Radio chicken parm map around at least the city. I could do the city. You know, I can't travel like you. I can't expense my flights for chicken parm, unfortunately. Maybe I need a new accountant. But Keith Raad, thanks for coming on. All righty. Great stuff there from Keith Raad. He'll be there Saturday. Christian Scott, 6 2/3. Great debut. Now he makes his home debut. Mr. Met London phone booth bobblehead day. I forgot why they were doing this at first, but I realized it was because the Mets are playing in London. So it all makes sense. The Mets will play in London. First 15,000 fans will receive a Mr. Met London phone booth bobblehead. You know, it looks kind of cool. It's a cool looking thing. Sunday will be the Mets tumbler. Like I said, I'll be Cadillac Club Sunday. So if anything goes to right field, look for me in that first row out there. But this is, a nice little test here. A nice little test. And I said 2 home, then 2 Philly. So 7 games coming up. The top 2 teams of the division. How will the Mets match up? And can Pete Alonso keep the good vibes going? Maybe seeing my chain will inspire him. Great event, by the way, for a great cause. The PGA Foundation was Jeff McNeil's cause. He was there with his family. Like I said, players were there. And then the Human Solidarity Project was Hank Azaria's cause. You're listening to the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic. I'm Jake Brown. And speaking of Hank Azaria, why don't we talk with Hank? Hank talked with me here coming up about the Simpsons still going, Brockmeyer, a potential new show, the Mets, everything else. So enjoy my interview coming up next year on the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic. We'll close it out with the great Met fan, comedian, actor, voiceover artist, Hank Azaria. Jake Brown Radio, here with Hank Azaria from Citi Field. We're home. It's a beautiful day at the ballpark. Not really, a little gloomy.
Yeah.
But tell us about the foundation, what you're doing tonight, and tell us about your poker game and your poker face, maybe.
It's a lot to cover there. Well, Jeff McNeil and I are co-hosting this poker event here at Citi Field. He's raising money for the PGA Foundation, where I think sends kids who can only afford 1 round of golf, they get a 2nd round of golf. No, I'm just kidding. They're a wonderful organization. I'm with the Human Solidarity Project. We're a social justice organization raising awareness on racial issues. We do it from large corporations to small groups, and they're very compassionate approach. I've been affiliated with them for about 10 years now. And apart from supporting the organization, it brings it places that maybe can't afford it, that need it. So, and yeah, I mean, it's a big win-win-win for me. Poker and raising money and Citi Field.
I mean, with all the off days and or I should say the rain delays and the rain outs, we're lucky we're able to fit it in today because you thought there might be a makeup game or something going on.
It was possible, but I play a regular poker game. I'm a huge poker fan.
Are you a good player? Or
I'm an above average player. I would say above average I can get away with.
More a Texas Hold'em guy, more a blackjack
Strictly
guy?
Hold'em. Blackjack is not poker, technically.
It's a card game of sorts.
It is a card game. It's a game of skill and chance. No, I'm not into like the what do they call it? Hold'em is what I like. What's the name? I'm getting old. What's the name of the game that the people like to play now? That's a crazy gambling game. I like the straight no limit.
No limit. Okay.
Yes.
How are you feeling about the Mets right now? We're floating around 500. I think we've dealt with injuries.
Yeah.
But they're playing fun baseball. I feel like they're coming back. They're playing with heart. They're playing with grit. I feel like you got to say something nice because Jeff is here. But what do you think about the boys so far?
No, I said earlier, they are fun to watch. There's a lot of hope. They really could go either way. It's going to be interesting to see how they do it once we get Senga back and see what they're. I'm curious about what the trade deadline's going to hold for us. But they're, I watch every game no matter what. So I'm so far enjoying what I'm seeing. In some ways, the pressure of last year with that payroll was crazy. It's a little more fun to watch just to see what a group of guys can do.
And you're excited for the youth movement coming.
Yeah,
Top prospects.
Absolutely.
We might see them in a couple of months here.
Yeah, that's really exciting. Actually, you haven't had that in a while.
Have you been a buzz about the Knicks and Rangers right now too?
I'm not a big hockey guy. I've been to a couple of playoff games. Yeah, the Knicks are really, really exciting. Not since Patrick Ewing days can we say that we had this much excitement. And I'm old enough to remember, 70, 73. I grew up worshiping those Walt Clyde Frazier teams, so I'm very excited.
I wasn't born then, but I had a great time knowing and learning about those teams. I love Clyde. When I talked to him, he said, make sure you write that I was styling and profiling tonight. So I try and style and profile myself.
Which you are doing.
I'm trying. Mets gear had to show support. Last one, what are you working on? Any shows coming up? I'm sure you get asked every day about Brockmire. Is there another season we don't know about?
No, we're working. There's always something in the works for Jim Brockmire. But that's kind of a ways off. Oh, wait, I'm lying. Next year, I'll be hosting a talk show, a sports talk show as Jim Brockmire for AMC.
Oh wow!
So I got that going for me, which is nice. As Bill Murray once said. And I'm working on a one-man show for Off Broadway right now, actually, which I hope to have up by the end of this year or early next year as well.
All right, so Off Broadway.
I always do The Simpsons. That's my day job.
The fact that show is still going is remarkable.
Today was the first season 36 began today.
How is that possible? 36. You gotta love it, right? Like you're not tired.
Oh yes,
clearly.
No, if they want to pay me to do that, still, I will show up and do it. No question.
36 seasons.
Yeah.
We're talking about like Game of Thrones, like 8. 8 is a laughing stock compared to 36.
8 nothing to us.
It's
absolutely nothing to us. 8.
I'm excited for this talk show because I remember you were doing a podcast.
Did that for a season. I still go on Dan Levitard every once in a while and do that. But yeah, we'll have the talk show next year.
You ever just talk to your family doing it and not even realize you're doing the voice?
All the time. That's how it started. I just call my own day, because I love this voice. So Azaria, waking up a little bit late, and had a rough night last night, and gonna try to make up for it this afternoon. Usually Jim Brockmire works real blue, so I don't want to say anything too bad. But I just kind of call whatever's going like. Sat here without a Mets shirt on. They're kind of skewed. He's got a different shade of blue as his blazer. I believe that is suede. No.
What is that, velvet?
Crushed velvet.
That's beautiful. What is that, velvet?
He's got some crushed velvet. He's got the orange socks.
How about Cheetos socks?
Cheetos socks.
No. I mean, tuck the man's shoes. Look at the man's shoes.
Wow.
And he's got the better shoes, orange and blue.
These are a gift from my son Hal. These are Mets and Knicks. They go either way. One to the garden, the other one.
I love it. I love the voice switch. I'm looking forward to the show. Tell us quick where for people to donate to the foundation.
Oh, that's the Human Solidarity Project. Look us up online. And they're a wonderful organization. So thanks.
Hank Azaria. Appreciate you coming on. Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
Great interview there with Hank. I had to show him the Cheetos socks. I need his shoes. He had the orange and blue Mets Knicks themed shoes. I need those. So, I had him on Amazing But True years back over the phone. So it was good to chat in person. Great guy. Nick Wright was there from FS1. Just a well-done event by the Mets and those foundations and Jeff and Hank. So had a blast on Thursday. And like I said, Mets return home. We'll see you at the ballpark. We'll be back next week. Make sure you subscribe. Sick Podcast, Mets Magic, youtube.com/@the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic, @SickPodMets on Twitter. Subscribe wherever you get podcasts. It's Apple, Spotify, wherever you get pods. Again, watch it on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up below. Need those thumbs up and comment below. Let us know what you're thinking about the Mets. Are you in trade mode? Do you want to trade Alonzo McNeil? What do you want to do? How you feeling? Let me know what you thought about the interview. Hank Azaria. Vent all your thoughts in the comments. I'll read some of the comments on next week's show. We'll try and do a mailbag next week as well. We'll have another special guest next week. And we'll come earlier in the week next week as well. Hopefully, it's tough with the schedule and things going on, but let's go Knicks. Let's go Rangers. Let's go Mets. Thanks for listening to the Sick Podcast, Mets Magic. I'm Jake Brown. We'll catch you next week.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Mets Magic on YouTube, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.